Winter Sleep, a hibernation story, follows a child and his grandma as they explore the quiet winter landscape, full of sleeping animals that are in hibernation during the cold months before spring. Who can you spot buried beneath the snow on the pages of this beautifully illustrated story of the natural world? Let's begin on our project. So I went ahead and I started sketching out one of the scenes from the book about the hibernation. What I also did is I grabbed a circle for the area that I want to use as my animal hibernates. So one of these cups was used to make that circle, just to give me a guideline of where I'm going to start. And then at the top, you can see I started drawing on some of the characters in the book as well as some different landscapes. So what I'd like to move on to next is getting started on the painting part. I'm going to go ahead and grab some white paint and start painting on where I want to have some of the snow for the project. And so I'm thinking to myself about, I want to save some areas for the ground underneath the snow and also show what's hibernating underneath there. So I'm just going to do a quick layer of paint onto my page, leaving the top part so I can come back to with some oil pastels when my paint is dry. Okay, that's a good start. And then I'm also, like I mentioned, going to go ahead and give it a loose. It doesn't have to be the perfect circle. In fact, it's probably better. You think about animals creating a hibernation spot. I'm just going to leave that kind of a messy circle. Okay. Now, if you want any iridescent glitter on there, now's a good time to put that on while the paint is still wet. So while the paint is drying, I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and start drawing out the animal. If I use the same size circle as my animal, it might fill up all of the circle that I just painted. So I'm just going to turn this around, use the smaller end of the circle or the smaller end of the cup, and then after I've drawn around that, you'll find that there's a bunch of different ideas for animals that could be hibernating. Feel free to choose the one you would like to add to your project. Once I figured out the animal that I wanted to use, I went ahead and I grabbed some oil pastels and started applying some color so that it's not just a solid color of brown paper. The other thing I'm focusing in on, visual texture. How can I make my animal have a look like it feels a certain way? So looking at some of the animals that were in there, I'm thinking about those visual textures to make it furry, to make it hairy, to give it some texture into my work. Once I'm done, I grabbed a pair of scissors and I started cutting out that shape. I had some leftover and I had plenty of white space left onto my project, so I thought this was pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and make a smaller version of the same animal so that they can be in the hibernation area together. So I thought that was kind of fun too. Okay, let's continue on. I grabbed my oil pastels and I started designing the top part of my paper. I started thinking about what colors I wanted to use and how to give it a little bit more sense of space, where we have some items that are above the ground, some items that are below the ground, and other fun details from the story that I wanted to include. So again, visual texture on my tree. And then the figures that I created, I'm grabbing my oil pastels and I'm designing their clothing with the oil pastels too. You'll notice I start out with color and then outline with black last so that the black doesn't smear. So let me talk to you a little bit about how I'm making those little branches that are coming from the ground. You can either start out by drawing a few stick lines. That might be helpful. And then what I just do is I'm going to cut around the sticks of the paper, turning it around every time I want to create. Oops, this is in the way, so I'm just going to cut that off. Every time that I want to create one of those stick-like pieces, I just turn the paper, keeping it nice and skinny, and follow on the outside of those lines, giving me some nice foliage that I can use. And it just does a really nice job of utilizing space and emphasizing the outdoors in this picture. So I'm going to make a few more of those, and then we'll come back. Now that I figured out where I wanted all of my little branches, I'm going to go ahead and use a very skinny line of glue onto my paper, glue those down in place where I want them. Love the way this is starting to look. It looks so real. It looks so dimensional with the different items that I'm putting on there. Starting to become very, very fun, very cool looking. It just looks so much like I'm part of the story. Okay, so now that I've got my pieces glued down and in place, I'm going to give them another good little tapping just because that glitter makes it a little bit harder for them to stick on. And then using the paintbrush bottom, I'm going to dip it into some red paint, and then we can put on a few red berries onto those sticks, like a winter berry, onto the project. If you find that that is something you like the way that looks. Winter berries are so beautiful. You can find some of these in Discovery Park, and they really stand out against the background, especially when all the leaves have fallen. Those winter berries are really starting to stand out nicely. This is such a fun project. I hope that you are enjoying it and had a lot of fun creating as well today.